All right, we're going to talk a little bit about head coach organization in this session, and it's just a opportunity to take it away from the offense, defense, special teams, any of the things we talked about, and really just talk about what it takes to be a head coach. And I hope this is helpful for people who are head coaches, have been head coaches, and aspire to be head coaches, because most people that watch this stuff fall into one of those three categories. So, you know, getting a head coaching job can be really exciting and also a little challenging. The analogy we always use talking to people about this is, it's kind of like a signing day for college athletes. You get the head coaching job, you're really excited, proud of yourself, and you should be. And then that's really when the work begins. That's really when the work begins. The work begins when you get that job. And the thing that stops people from being successful as much as anything else, it's not the only thing, but the thing that stops people as much as anything else is being organized. So I hope the next hour we can help you get a little more organized or think about how you would have a plan as a head football coach. So this is probably more catered to football, but most of these principles would be true in any sport you were the head coach of. So you want to be a head coach. Do you have a plan? Is it a real plan? Do you just say you want to be a head coach? Hey, guys, I can't tell you how many times as a head coach myself, and then as an athletic director and district athletic director, I find myself working with people who wanted to be head coaches, but never had a plan to be one. They get the job and they just kind of think they're going to figure it out. So my advice to you is, if you're currently a head coach, kind of reevaluate what you're doing in all aspects and follow what we're going through here. If you aspire to be a head coach, go ahead and start thinking about, what's my realistic plan? And real is the key word there. It's got to be a real plan. Do you have ways to assess it? And, assess is a big word. So meaning, is it working? Yes or no? If it's not, what do we need to change? If it's working, we got to keep it. Are you really going to do it all? Guys, I have sat in dozens of head coach interviews, and 9 out of every 10 of them say a bunch of stuff they can't do. It sounds really good. We're going to get all the coaches once a week with their wives. We're going to meet, we're going to eat dinner. Then another day, we're going to get all the coaches with their individual position groups. We're going to eat dinner. And another day, we're going to go to FCA and eat dinner. And another day, we're going to, before you figure it out, they got 8 or 9 dinners a week. It's like, it sounds really good, but you got to put it in practice. And then the third thing we'll talk about is, do you understand the following things? Relationships, communication, and presentation. Those 3 things kind of make it go no matter what your plan is. All right, so basically I want to break it down these 7 categories. So if I was trying to be a head coach, or when I was, we wanted to have plans for these 7 things. My advice is to write them down. My way to do it was put it on the computer. If you want to do a legal pad or whatever, that's fine. But I would advise having a plan for these 7 things and writing it down. We're going to go through each one of them over the next hour. Excuse me. So then you say, okay, we're going to take them 7 things. We're going to say, how do you come up with a real plan? It's really easy to say, really hard to do. You have to have a vision, meaning you need to think to yourself, okay, in terms of player development, where do I see this going? What's my vision? What do I hope it looks like in a perfect world? Then you have to have some methods, which would be, how are we going to get there? So I think, again, when I listen to a lot of head coach interviews, there's a lot of vision talk, not a lot of methods talk. A lot of, we want to be a team that does this and this and this. Okay, well, how are we going to be a team that does this and this and this? And that's your methods, which is really the meat of what you got. And then the last thing I think is the least used and most overlooked group is the assessment, meaning constantly, is this working? Yes or no? Is this working? Yes or no? So I hope I'm with you. And if you guys listen live, ask me a question if I'm losing you. But what I wanted us to do is go through those 7 categories. And I want you to come up with your plan for each category using these things. So, excuse me. If it comes down to talking about coaching staff development, what's your vision? How do you envision this going with this coaching staff you're going to be the head coach of? How are you going to get there? And then how are you going to figure out if this is working or not? Then go over to your offense, defense, special teams. How do I want this offense to look? Well, how are we going to get it to look like that? How are we going to tell if it's working? Because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want to keep the parts that's good, fix the parts not. You're never going to have it all figured out. So if you, that assessment part is really critical. So you take the first one. You think of stuff like player development. And we kind of broke it down into how to get organized for what your plan is. So I hope that's been clear so far as we're really starting to get into the meat of this, which is what I'm trying to do today is help you get organized on how can I come up with my plan. I'm not really trying to tell you what a good plan would be. I'm telling you, you should pause this PowerPoint and write all those things on that slide down about player development. And on each one of those things, you should say, I hope it looks like this. Here's how I'm going to make it look like that. And here's how I'm going to fix it, or I'm going to assess it. So let's talk about like strength and conditioning. And we'll stay on this one for a minute to kind of give you an idea, and then we'll go through. Everybody's got their ways of doing strength and conditioning, whatever. Not saying any of them are right or wrong. Not my time to talk about that. But if you're a football coach, that's an important part of what you do. So you're going to say, okay, I want guys who are blank. And let's just say, for example, you're going to say, I want guys who can squat. They can do back squat, they can get parallel, and they can do a heavyweight squats more so than people that can bench. You know, you're not saying you don't want to bench, but you want to have teams that can squat. You want to have guys who are explosive in lateral speed or something like that. You just kind of think about in your head, what in a perfect world is this going to look like? Then you say, well, how are we going to be good at squatting? How are we going to get better lateral speed? You know, there's a million books, websites, Twitter, whatever, where you can research ways to do that. So you got your plan, you put in however you're going to do it, then how are you going to assess it? So this one's easy because your assessment plan, you're writing, okay, we're going to max squats on, you know, March, July, and October, or whenever you're going to do it. And we would like for the team, you know, for 15% of the team to be, you know, 365 or more or something like that. We're going to do pro agility, shuttle, the same times, and we want to see everybody's times go down incrementally. Even, and if you were trying to put real detail into it, you might even say, if the squats improvements are less than the bench or the clean improvements, then you're probably not putting the emphasis on it you thought you were. And you may think cleans need to be more important. It doesn't matter, guys. I'm just making an example. But you have to have a plan. And it can't be pie in the sky. And then you have to think about, how am I going to get there? Excuse me. So take that one piece and think of those three things. Then you go down to what I think may be the most important part of winning high school football games is this mental and emotional development, because these kids, we don't get to hit at practice like we used to. We don't get the kids playing because we said so. And it's not as cool sometimes to just suck it up and play and sit the bench until you're a senior. And there's all these different things that are problems in high school ball. So if you can tap into just getting kids to want to play, I mean, man, that's where you got them. And so team building, making it fun, social media, a reward system of sort, a leadership plan, a plan to improve their academics, a plan for recruiting. All those are things where I'm going to say to myself, if I'm a head coach, if I don't have a plan, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, we got all that. Well, good for you. I would advise writing it down if you don't, and make sure you're for real looking into it. But, you know, good for you. That's great. If you don't, if you have half of it, get the other half. Maybe you're even thinking of one or two I'm missing right now. That's okay too. Email it to me. I'll add it to this for next time. Because this is the deal, guys. You got to have a plan for these things. You can't just say, we want to be a team that has player leadership. We want to be player-led, not coach-led. There's a go-to coach line. Great vision. Great vision statement there. We want to be player-led, not just coach. Okay. Well, what are we doing to be player-led? Well, nothing. We have nothing. Well, there you go. So you're probably not player-led. If you're really doing a good job, you probably have some player plan. It could be a leadership council. It could be something where guys come in earlier or stay late or whatever and meet with the head coach about different things. They can read books. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's going to be a way where we develop it. And then you say, maybe in this case, it's at the end of the year. How's our assessment? We look back and say, did we feel like we had good leadership on this team from the players? If the answer was yes, then read the same damn book again next year. And if the answer was no, that's okay too, because you're going to have plenty of no's. Find a new book, find a new scheme, go talk to somebody, think of a new way to develop player leaders. Same way with academics. Are we tracking academics? How many guys have A's and B's? How many guys are whatever? So if, when we assess it, pretty easy. Recruiting, same thing. Team policies and procedures. This is a big one. You need to know, what is my vision for this? I actually think maybe of all the slides I'm going to put up here, team policies and procedures can be where coaches' vision and methods do not match. I mean, you say a team where we're not going to put up with stuff. We're going to run guys off if they don't want to show up in the summer, or if they don't want to whatever. That's great. Then run them off. Don't make that the vision and then not the method. I would say generic things like, we want our players to do right. We want to be dependable. If we were on the field, we cared about attitude and effort. So if it was off the field, do right, be dependable, meaning be on time, be where you're supposed to be, and do right. If it was on the field, it was attitude and effort. And then we try to make sure every punishment fixed one of those things. So if you came to our practice and at the end of practice, we had something called the distraction list, where people that were distractions, ran over and backs. They get so many days. They run like 5 over and backs per day. So, teacher emailed me, they were messing around in class, not doing right. Maybe they're on there 1 day. They miss practice. Maybe they're on there 3 days. They do something really stupid. They're on there 20 days. I don't know. But I'd assign them a number of days to run after practice. Well, if you came out there, every one of those kids run, and hopefully it wasn't that many, but maybe some days it was. Every one of those kids running had 1 of 4 problems. Did not do right, was not dependable, didn't have the right attitude or effort on the field. That's it. There was no other things. It was very clear. We had a vision. We had methods that supported that. And then, of course, the assessment on that is, are we really making a difference and being fair? And, you know how team policies work. If for some reason you're not being even the slightest fair, somebody will definitely let you know it. Sometimes even when you are being fair, they'll let you know it. So that's 1/7 of these categories. The next thing, I put a couple examples of things I had, and most of you guys, if you're watching this, probably seen stuff we put on Twitter. And it's just some of that. I mean, you guys, if you have any stuff of mine, you can see all this and zoom in on it, or get it off any of my stuff or whatever. And I have dozens of things on player development. These are just 2. But these are different things we would do to say, what is our method for how we want to get there? What is our vision, and then how are we going to get there? So, just some good examples of that when it comes to player development. Coaching staff. Now, that player development slide, I really feel strongly most everything I said in there would have been helpful for you if you're coaching any sport. This is probably more of a football thing because football staffs are bigger. A lot of the other sports may only have 1 assistant, maybe 2. But in football, traditionally, you have more than that. So it becomes a big part of your job to put these people where they can be the most successful. And dealing with adults, as we talk about on our podcast sometimes, that most people coming into this head coaching job feeling pretty good about their relationships with kids. And dealing with adults is the thing that makes them unsuccessful if they end up unsuccessful. That could be the assistant coaches, it could be administration, it could be parents. But the adults are where there's really a deficiency if you're not used to dealing with adults. And a lot of assistant coaches aren't. So if you're an assistant coach right now, aspiring to be a head coach, I would really advise you to get as much time as you can working with the adult problems, maybe with your head coach or just reading and doing some of the stuff. It's not as fun as reading about, RPOs and, some of the defense stuff people do. It's not as fun. Way more likely to get you fired. So if you look at the staff responsibilities, we want to have a detailed responsibility list of where we want everybody to be. What's your vision for how all these different things are going to go on the team? What's your vision for the staff leadership? How you going to hire and retain coaches? That's a big one. How you going to run your staff meeting? How you going to scout? How you going to develop coaches? Because here's the thing, guys, in high school ball, unlike college, most places, you're not going to necessarily get to bring whoever you want. You might come in as a new job and be able to bring one or two people, you got to blend it with the old staff. You got to make those guys better coaches. The guys who really stay in this and win in the long run are guys who can make coaches better coaches. Instead of just always trying to fire them and get a better coach, you make that guy a better coach. So in all these aspects, what's your vision for it? How do you envision being able to hire and keep the coaches? That's really two different things. Probably should have made that two bullets. Hiring coaches is one process, but how you going to retain them? Ain't going to make them want to stay with you even if they get an equal opportunity somewhere else. How you want to run your meetings. And an assessment is actually easy on these because you can work with the staff on them. It's like a postseason evaluation on how did this kind of stuff go. And usually you can get some pretty good feedback that way. So that may be your assessment method for most of these. But a couple things we got out, this is our support staff, which have been like managers, groups like that, video crews, student coach type people. And then over here, this is basically just a running list of every job that I gave somebody. So somebody had to be all these things. And of course, many people had multiple of these things. But we were doing kick return. We needed somebody looking at all these things right here. So I'm just assigning jobs. And then when we got to that staff responsibility, everybody had their job. So that was our plan. That was our vision and our methods mixed into that. And then is it working? That comes from our end of the year assessment, or like a survey or any kind of coach survey that you can get them to do. The next group, and you guys stop and ask me if you have a question, if anybody has a question, but the next group is booster clubs and parents. This is another extension of the adult group. And the adult group is the one that's going to get you fired. Keep that in mind, that nobody likes reading articles and watching videos and tweeting about football more than me. But that X and O stuff's not the first thing that's going to get you in trouble. It's these adults not handling the coach staff well, not handling booster club parents, not dealing well with the community, administration, whatever. So what role and responsibility do you have for the booster club? And I'll give you a good example. Like for me, when I was a head coach, I like to do it this way. It's just my way, not saying it's right or wrong, but we divided up the jobs based on the class. So the senior parents got a budget. We gave them X amount of money that was voted on at the beginning of the year and decided and all that. We gave X amount of money and they decided the banquet, pregame meals, and senior night out of that money. They were in charge. They did everything for it. Now they could ask other people for help. But if we gave them, $7,500 and they wanted $10,000, then they had to go raise $2,500 more in addition to what we already raised. It was their job to make this work. They need to go get things donated. The more stuff they got donated during the season, the bigger the banquet could be. you know, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a very good, that worked out well for us. Not saying that's how everybody should do it, but that was a role and responsibility. I could say, these are senior parent issues. This is ninth grade parent issues. This is, you know, whatever it is. And they had a role. We laid it out for them. They, you know, they knew what it was. And then we had to assess it. Is that working? You know, for the senior budget that I was just talking about, if they're consistently really struggling for that, to make it work with the money we gave them, we may need to give more next year. If they're really leaving a lot of money on the table, maybe we need to back it off a little bit, you know, or we need to do more things with it. So the good thing about Booster Club is a lot of it is money driven. So it's kind of easy to assess in terms of whether it's working or not. When dealing with the parents, you know, this can be the tricky one. And it's tougher than it's ever been. But you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. If you want to have parent rule, and I would advise you to maybe have a couple of simple ones. Let's use the old adage of, you know, we're not going to talk about playing time. Or you could say, we're not going to talk about anything 24 hours after the game, up to whatever that is. Pick out a couple of rules like that. Stay consistent with them, but that's your vision. How do you envision yourself as a guy dealing with parents? And sometimes as a younger coach or an aspiring coach, you kind of have the attitude of you won't have these issues. Well, trust me, you will. So just kind of assume that, you know, prove me wrong, but plan for it anyway. And assume you'll have some parent issues. What are you going to do about it? What's the process? It needs to be very consistent. You know, so for me, it was going to be, are we talking about the scheme? Are we talking about other people's kids? Or are we talking about playing time? Because I'm not talking about anything. And I didn't care if it was a day after the game or 18 days after the game or whatever. We're not talking about that. So when they call you, you got to lay that out there. Well, the second or third time they call you, won't talk about playing time. They'll say it's not about that. It's about something else. And, you know, inevitably they'll convince you that you got to meet with them at least. So you meet with them and they start talking about that. And you just have to say, look, all due respect, you know, not working out. I found with working with parents, being real respectful is really the move. Just let them get mad. Oh, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, if I was you, I'd probably feel that way too. But, you know, unfortunately, we got to play the best ones. And, you know, your kids, one of the best ones will get to play. And, you know, we're not really going to talk about that. So that was just my approach. And since I had rehearsed that, and I, you know, of course, when you've been a head coach a long time, you kind of got this. But if you're new, you got to kind of think about what you're going to say. And you say it over and over again. And people kind of know that's who you are. For the school community, which I think we kind of put in this slide because it's not Booster Club or parents, but it's in that same community vein. The school community, administration, faculty, staff, other programs, find a way to utilize them. Find a way. Like if I had this plan that I'm talking about, I think you should put together, send it to the principal. Something as simple as that is helpful. Involve the faculty. We used to have teacher captains every home game. Seniors, pick a teacher, whatever, take a picture with them, put them on Facebook. They'll be the honorary captains. We also did helmet stickers as part of our award system that I wrote back on the player development. We would give out these helmet stickers every Wednesday, and kids got into it, whatever. So I let kids give helmet stickers to other kids. Each coach went around and gave a sticker to for somebody that did something. A lot of times stuff that didn't happen during the game. That's why we did it on Wednesday. But, you know, obviously sometimes stuff that happened. But then we let the teachers give them out. So, you know, Wednesday morning, we're sending an email to the faculty, hey, giving out helmet stickers tonight. Anybody wants to give one out? And we had a great response from that. Teachers always wanting to give them out to their kids. And, you know, hey, Johnny did really well on his math test that he struggled before. You know, can we recognize him, coach? Absolutely. So we tell Johnny at practice, Johnny, Miss So-and-so giving you a helmet sticker. Made that kid's day. They like the teacher. Teacher's happy. Man, that was a deal. Include them. Other programs. Now, if you don't know what I mean by that, I'm talking about if you're the football coach, we're talking about basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever, whoever you share with. Include them. Let the basketball coaches be down there on the sideline with them. Let them come talk to the kids, before the game, stuff like that. Then your outside community, that's talking about your local leaders, whatever. Can you do some community service? What's your plan for that? What's your vision? How you going to do it? How you going to know if it's working? Same thing as everything else. All right. Anybody got a question? There's a few things that we use for those. I'll let y'all look at those. The finances is just a list of things we use. We knew we had to buy them, not every single year, but we need to run through it every year and see if we need to. And then these are some of our parent rules or things we gave the parents when they had a parent meeting every year. I liked having the parent meetings by class, whatever. But now we're getting into more specific stuff. Practice. We're talking about practice. What's your format going to be? What you going to do before practice? Because, practice doesn't magically happen. You need to have descriptions of what each period is going to look like. You need to have depth chart of what's going to look like. This is where, and I wrote this down here so I'd remember to say it, but this is where being organized can really make a difference, or it can really hurt you if you're not. Because I want to say I go to a bunch of practices, but I go to some practices, and there's just kind of two kind of practices. There's either good and bad ones. I don't know. There's just a lot of people standing around. Periods take a long time to go from one to the next, or they don't. And it's really that simple. So, what's your plan? I think if you're a good head coach, you probably have spent about twice the amount of practice getting ready for practice. So you practice 2 hours, may have taken you 4 hours, to get ready for that practice, especially combine what you do for like scout cards and some of that stuff, but have everything planned out. If the varsity, we like doing 2 huddles if we could anyway. So if the varsity offense is going, we got 2 huddles running a drill. There's one scout huddle, but then there's another scout huddle ready to sub in every couple plays. That's 44 kids. Maybe JV and ninth grade going on another end of the field. That could be 44 more kids. You can get some people involved. The only way that doesn't work is if you don't really have a plan for who's going in. So that practice period description. So what I mean by that is if you say, okay, we're going to inside drill. Here's what inside drill is supposed to look. You got that written out. Don't just say it like they know what you mean. Hell, most of these guys, especially if they ain't coach for you, they don't know what you're talking about, exactly where you were. And then have your depth. Have it laid out. These are going to be the guys on the scout team. It maybe even worth it to write their name on the scout card. Whatever you got to do. And then have a plan, obviously, for what you're going to do after practice. Now, we could spend a whole hour just talking about this. We could actually spend a whole hour talking about each one of these 7 things. I'm trying to just kind of glaze over it, give you the topics, give you an example or two, let you make your own plan. Your plan don't have to be as detailed as mine, or it could be more detailed than mine. I just think you need to be able to say to yourself, somebody says, hey, Coach so-and-so, what's your vision? How's practice supposed to look like? You say, well, we're going to have everybody flying around. We're not going to have any wasted time. We're going to have this and this and this. Okay. How are we going to do that? You say, okay, well, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to have 2 huddles here. We'll have 2 huddles here. This coach is going to be standing on the sideline. He's going, that's a plan. How are we going to assess it? Well, we're going to have practice. And if it actually feels like everybody's doing something, then that's pretty good. If we get out there and realize that some of that stuff might have been unrealistic, might have sounded good on paper, but we can't really do it, then we got to reevaluate. It's really that simple, guys. That same vision, method, assess. So let's move on to game day. You got to have a plan. If you did anything to do during the day, sometimes people do, some don't. But you got to load a truck. You got to get stuff ready for the home game, whatever it is. Have that stuff listed out. You got to have a home plan from the minute school lets out to the minute you kick off. What's going to happen? And you got to have an away plan. Now, the away plan obviously has to change, but here's what we always did about the away plan. We want to be at the stadium at such and such time. So for us, it was like 5:30. We don't be at the stadium at 5:30. So once we got to the stadium at 5:30, everything was the same from then on. And how long, depending on where the stadium was, how long it took to get to 5:30, that changed it a little. In game. This is another place where a plan and being organized can really, really, really make a difference. People get in those games, they work all year. I mean, coaches work hard, man. Getting those games, only 10 of them a year, about 200, 250 days. Otherwise, you're working probably. They get excited, they get wound up, they say stuff they shouldn't say, they lose their cool, and they're not as helpful to the team. A lot of times they just don't know what their role is. They just haven't really had to think about it. So we want to talk to our guys about what's their in-game responsibility and then what's the in-game kind of rules. Okay, Coach so-and-so, you're going to signal to the skill players on offense, when we're on the field, when the offense is off the field, you're going to be on this part of the tent talking to so-and-so, watching a video. When we go to halftime, you're going to do this. When we go after we just told them. Their job wasn't to talk to the refs, stuff like that. They had roles that they could do. Same way with post game. You got a home post game routine because you just going in the field house and going from there. And then you got an away routine where you got to pack the sideline up and get on the bus. So those are kind of different. And it's the same thing. You think about it. And I hope there's somebody watching this that thinks to themselves, well, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I need a plan for that. A lot of this stuff you guys got a plan for. You don't need me to tell you. But some of this stuff you don't. And if you don't, I need to think about it. What do I want this to look like? Is it realistic? How are we going to actually get there? And then how am I going to know it's working or it's not before it's too late? That's really the key. Here's a couple of our game day stuff, plans. This was our pregame routine for home games and for away games. Now, over here, where it says in game, I didn't put if I gave this to the coaches, it would have had names by all this stuff. But since we put it out with our Parker research, names out. But offense on the field, say we had 5 offensive coaches, each one of them doing
I'm
something.
using the bathroom.
And then we come off.
What's up?
And each of them doing something there.
I'll be right out, okay?
Hold on, sorry. Light distracted me. We had our in-game coaching rules here. Coach your position regardless of the score. Handle your in-game responsibilities. Don't let your emotions make you not do your job. Keep your composure. Either way. I don't mean don't get excited. I didn't say that. We score, get excited, get back to work. Nobody should talk to the officials. That was just always important to me. Only person that's going to show their ass to the officials is going to be me. Then I laid out how our sideline wanted to look, where we wanted our defensive players to be, the reserves, where we had chairs and a tent right here where we kind of kept the offensive, defensive. We had, by the end of the time I was coaching, you had TVs and stuff down there where we could watch replays and all that. And, and then we just kind of laid it out. And you'd be surprised, making a little graphic like that, which honestly, in past a PowerPoint slide, it took me like 15 minutes maybe. And it just kind of lays out. That's how it's supposed to look. Okay. Don't sell yourself short thinking you got to be some kind of genius of Microsoft to make all this stuff work. You really don't. Just got to figure some stuff out, just like anything else. Just commit to doing it. Make yourself a plan. All right, the scheme. See, the point of this thing tonight was to tell you these 7 categories. And I don't know that they're all 7 equal. I don't think they're all 1/7 of what makes you a successful head coach. But there is 7 categories. And one of these 7 categories is offense, defense, special teams. I think a mistake that some people make is they assume that's more than that. And it's very important. I mean, offense, defense, special teams is very important. If you're horrible as a coach at offense or defense, you're not going to win. But I think people know that, so I don't feel compelled to preach that as much. If you're horrible dealing with administration, you also are not going to win. So have a plan for this other stuff. This is the plans people like. These are the plans people like. So I didn't even go into a long thing about what each one should be. I thought when I was thinking about offensive defense scheme, if I was trying to help somebody, if somebody asked me the question, how should I know it's time to change offenses or defenses, or if I go take a new job, what offense should I run? Something like that. I would say these 3 questions. What do you understand? How can you be unique? And what fits your team? So what do you understand? And I put that first because, listen, guys, it's great if you watch the video of Auburn and Georgia. That's great. But if you don't really understand why they're doing that, it just may or may not work. So you got to make sure you understand what you want to run on offense or defense. I thought, unless you're at a really, really good school that just has a lot of good players, I always thought you had to kind of be unique. Or I always wanted us to be a little unique. And by that, I may mean, when people were running the ball a lot, were we throwing it enough? When they're throwing a lot and we're running enough? What's unique about us? And I like, we were in empty a lot and tried to shift that. That was kind of, it's where we ended the last several years anyway, was being unique by being an empty. And does this fit your team? Meaning, are you a school that traditionally has pretty good running backs and you're getting an empty every play? You a school that traditionally has no quarterback and you're getting an empty every play? Are you, what can your kids kind of do? So ask yourself those 3 questions. Ask them on defense. Don't get caught up in the hype. Don't get caught up saying, the new fad is something that you don't really understand. Look, the new fad works a lot. And I'm not saying don't run it. I say go understand it. Go understand it if you want to run it. What works for these offense, defense, special teams, just like everything else I've been saying in this presentation. Ask yourself, okay, I'm going to be the head coach, whether I already am the head coach, I aspire to be, I just got hired, whatever. And we're going to have a kickoff team next year. How do I want that kickoff team to look? Well, I want the best guys on the team on kickoff, or I want the fastest people, or whatever it is. Okay. Well, then your methods would be, we're going to make kickoff a priority. We're going to tell people they got to play kickoff. We're going to put, 5 kicker 5, put the ball in the hash, whatever we're going to do. You got to have that. What methods are you going to use? And then how are you going to assess it? I mean, for us, it would probably be something like our kickoff versus their kickoff. Who's got the better average starting field position? That's easy. I mean, when we kicked off, they started on the -20 because we kicked them all in the end zone. When they kicked us, we started on the 30. So we got a first down every time. Or vice versa. It was the opposite. We got to reassess. Are we trying to kick off deep and we're kicking it to the 2, but a line drive where they can run it right back every time? Maybe we need to squib. Maybe we need to sky. Maybe we need to do something different because our assessment says this is not what we wrote down. When we wrote down that vision of we're going to put the best guys out there and kick ass on kickoff. No, you're not, if they're getting to the 30 or 40 every time. So let me make this clear on all these things with offensive. What if you got to have a realistic plan. So is it realistic to say we're going to put our best players on offense, our best players on defense, our best players on kickoff, kick return, punt return? That's really not realistic. So you may say, we're going to put kids who want to give great effort on kickoff. Maybe 3 or 4 of them, that's the only play they play all night, but they're not bad football players. They're just not, not every down varsity players. They're just kind of missiles, Put them in there, bump them up. And if they occasionally miss a tackle that maybe the better kid would have made, but that allowed you to have your mantra of we're going to play kids offense and defense both ways. You'll have a realistic plan. But if your realistic plan is we are going to put the best guys on kickoff and they're returning that thing back to the 40 every time, that plan sucks. So find a different plan, assess it, go back to the vision, start over, find some new methods, then assess that. If that's working, keep it. If it's not, go back to the vision again. For each one of these things, have a kick return plan, have a punt plan, have a punt return plan, and think of it in those terms. I'm not telling you how to punt. That'd be a whole nother thing, one of these. And we can have that. I like to do things a certain way, but that's not the purpose of what I want to do tonight, is share with you how I want to do it all. I want to share with you the organizational style that I feel like works. We're going to punt in this way. It's what we want to look like when we punt. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to assess it. If we're not net punting 35 net, we're not doing it right. So figure that out. You want to have one for all these things, guys. And this can be the most fun topic. And a lot more people will be good at this one of these 7 than any of the other ones. But it also can be challenging. People have a lot of ideas, but they don't really have them written down. They haven't really thought about them as realistic. They haven't really thought about them as how they're going to make that vision actually happen. And they hadn't really thought about how they're going to assess it. How they're going to figure out if it's working. Now, in this particular case, I just put up a, part of our running back manual and part of our outside backer manual. And I mean, kind of is what it is. But if you want to see the whole thing, we got all that everywhere. But I want to we had a plan. We're going to ask these running backs to run jet, buck, stretch, and zone. That's all they ran. They ran them from different positions. Here's how we're going to do it. I don't care if you agreed or disagreed with our offense. This is what we're going to do. We're going to ask these guys to do these things and how it worked. We're going to ask them to do several. There's a couple more blocks. It's just one page, but 2 of their blocks were down blocks, wrap blocks, and we were going to work that over and over. We had these 3 or 4 things we're going to work, and that was that. A part of this that gets lost is working with the total program. Such a premium on right now. Get on the kids for not being able to see the future and not focus on anything other than right now. But then sometimes coach is bad about doing that too. And you can't give lip service to JV, freshman, middle school youth, whatever you're over, okay? Like when I was at Pickens, we K-12 do it all, however I want to do it. When I was at Chapel Hill, it was more like 9-12. So, you got control over what you got control over. But whatever that is, you guys think there's ever been a coach, ever in the history of coaching, that went into the interview and said, I don't even care about those JV or freshman kids? Nobody's ever said that. Are there some people that actually their methods show they don't care about those? Yes, there are. There are plenty of people. Accidentally, I don't think on purpose, I mean good folks, they're accidentally have this vision of we're going to take care of these young kids. They're the future. But then their method is we put the 3 sorriest people we could find down there with them, and I don't even know half their names. That's sorry. That's sorry. That's not matching that vision. what methods are you going to match that vision? You know, like in my opinion, easiest way to match that vision is if the offense practicing with the varsity, then defense, JV and freshman, and it's the same coach. So the varsity defense coordinator working with them, and you got to sell them on that. We got to do this, baby. Then the assessment's easy. How are them teams doing? Keep this in mind when assessing your total program. When I say how them teams doing, how are they doing winning and losing, obviously? What's the retention rate? That's the thing you need to know. Probably something most of you never even thought of. I wanted to know how many seventh graders on that team and how many of them played eighth grade football. You know, how many ninth graders came back and played 10th grade football? You're going to lose some. So, I mean, I don't want to act like we didn't lose some. We lost them. But we wanted to know what it was. And if it got way down there, our methods ain't working. So we can assess it by what's the retention rate? I mean, I wanted to know who played the next year. Because they played the next year, they had a good time. Wasn't perfect, but they had a good time. And so retention rate was so important. And when they get to the varsity now, the best kids are playing, and we're not as worried about that. But up until that varsity level, we really are. We want the same kids playing. You never know who's going to pop up in freshman ball or JV ball and end up being a really good varsity player. It wasn't necessarily before. And that happens all the time. So have a vision. You know, how you going to get there? Make it match the vision. And then look into whatever stats help you determine what that is. This is a little harder slide because, you know, everybody doesn't have, you know, most of the other stuff I could speak to coaches on pretty easy, but everybody's got a different kind of perspective on this because you may only be over JV and freshman, or you may only have one of them groups, or I don't know. All right, so kind of winding down here. Are you doing this for real? Take your plan, write it down, make it happen. So if you say, okay, coach, I did everything you told me to up to today. I took all them little categories, wrote me down a sentence or two, wrote down another sentence or two on how I was going to do it, wrote down how I was going to figure out if it was working. Now what? Okay, well, here's how now. Okay, so you take that plan and you write it down in another thing where you say, okay, I got to make this kind of a calendar of sort. So if you wrote down, we're going to give helmet stickers every Wednesday, which is what we do. Well, as dumb as this sounds, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but you need to write down, we need to buy some damn helmet stickers. You know, because a lot of these plans get lost in something as simple as that. You need to buy some helmet stickers. Make yourself a note to tell the kids about it in June or July. Pump it up. And then when are you going to start giving them out? And then every Wednesday, have it on the practice plan or whatever day. If you put in your plan, you know, we want to have a senior parent thing like Coach Parker said. We want the senior parents to have a meeting. We're going to explain to them they're over the budget for the banquet and for senior night and for pregame meals. And here's how you do it. Blah, blah. Well, set a meeting. Write it on your calendar. Set a meeting for yourself about a week or two ahead of them, maybe with the Bush Club president or something, so you can talk about that. You know, and this may be in May. So right now we're in January. You're planning this out. Everybody has a good January plan, guys. Everybody heard about their buddy doing that senior parent night, and they want to do it, but they forget to organize. And it gets too close to the time, and they just can't do it. So I would put all this stuff. I'd read the whole plan, put it in the calendar, and have kind of the things you got to do. And that's where I got this, which, you know, the people that follow me on Twitter and all seen this before. Where, you know, if you look over here, May, senior parent meeting. April to do this month. Somewhere in there, probably get ready for the senior parent meeting. You know, like I matched it up, and then I just checked through this stuff. This is what I had to do at some point during the month. I did this stuff every day at some point, and this was the events we had. You don't have to do it like this. This just worked for me. But it's hard to do a real plan. It's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody would win. Everybody would be organized. It's hard. And don't, you know, if you really are listening to this and really enjoying it, you're probably one of the few people that are. This topic, even though it's very important, when we talk about stuff like this on a podcast or these clinics, less people listen. We start talking about inside drill, way more people listen. And that's okay. I'm just telling you, if you can get organized, that's an advantage you have. Because all your fellow coaches are not necessarily into this. They're into getting Gatorade dumped on them and talking about ball. This is what it's all about. Making the program go. All 12 months. Excuse me. Does anybody have a question? Let's see.